Greetings, adventurers, and welcome to another episode of Dungeon Master's Toolkit. I'm your guide, Brock, and today we're venturing into the realm of collaborative world building. Our guest, Jeff, is the brain behind the Collaborative Campaign Creator, a tool that has inspired my own home game. In our conversation, Jeff will reveal the inspirations for his tool and delve into its inner workings. So gather your maps, your imagination, and join us on this journey of world building.
I'm Jeff. I made this thing and we're going to talk about it. I'm calling it the Collaborative Campaign Creator because alliteration tickles my happy spot in my brain. It's basically the whole point of the thing was that all growing up for like 20 years, I've been doing homebrew campaigns, and most of the time it involves like me alone in a room trying to piece together things I think are funny and interesting, and then gathering players up and being like, hey, do you also think this is cool? And then trying to create some buy-in. But more recently, I had kids and like a full-time job and just no time whatsoever to like do all of that, like 20 hours of work over the course of like a week or two to like put a campaign together and then be like, well, I hope they like the plots we made. So instead, I got this idea for just doing it collaboratively, just having each player design a piece and then putting that together for the campaign. Kind of started like one campaign. The wizard in the party asked me, hey, how do wizard towers work? And I was like, I got no idea, man. I haven't had a chance to think about it. How do you think they work? And he was like, oh, I think they do this and this, and they communicate this way, and they all have teleportation towers, and you can pay a fee to like, and they're like teleport points. And I was like, rad, cool, run it, print. Purely in I don't have time to deal with this. Sure, that'll work. So instead, I just thought, okay, let's just make that ground up how things work. So the basic idea is, and a lot of these like specific options are totally optional. You can just do it as a creation process. You can just do regular 5e character generation. I added in a little bit of selection rules, kind of make it a little, to tickle that grindy aspect of like, what do they call it? Like the optimizer kind of thing. But you basically make an origin for your character. It's like a hometown, and it could be a metropolis or it could be a hut in the woods. Whatever it is fine. You make that little origin point for your character. You can name it. You're a hermit from Bog Ridge. No idea what that means. They're opposite land spectrums, but whatever. It's called Bog Ridge. And then you make the surrounding land features. So you got mountains to the north and an ocean to the east, and whatever it is. You fill it in, and you have a little mini map. Take that little mini map, mix it in with other players, and you've got your campaign map. And then you do the same thing with plot points. You take backstory from like a big 30-page mess or a teeny tiny little like 30-word run-on sentence and split it up into some manageable pieces and then tie those together, and you've got your campaign plot ready to go. So I've done this a couple times with different groups. First time is maybe 50 minutes to an hour during session 0 to build, just because people aren't familiar with it. I've done follow-up campaigns, and it's like 20 minutes, and you're ready to go. Everybody's contributing to the campaign. There's instant buy-in from your players, and everybody is like, oh, we're exploring those mountains that are next to my hometown. And it's like, yeah, we are. Hey, what's something cool about those mountains? It's like, there's a blue flower that gives you an extra spell slot. And you kind of give them a little look, and you go, sure, if you make your medicine check to brew the potion right. Yeah, that's how it works. And you can kind of just run improv style off from there. So just kind of going through. I'm actually going to try to skip to the page. Oop, that's the wrong button. Just to show the handout that you'd make. So this is kind of what it looks like when you hand it out to players. There's a couple of versions of it, but you basically print out this last page of the thing and then cut it in half and fold it in half, and you've got your map on one side and your like little plot points on the other, and you just hand that to the players. And then you get to go ahead and put in that point of origin. I've got it where you can optionally do a lot of the like backstory features from the player's handbook.
Sure.
So like the languages, tool proficiencies, kind of things. You can make it like a metropolis. They get to pick 2 languages and a tool proficiency from like any proficiency. It's a metropolis. You can pick up any skill. And then if you're from like a crossroads kind of area, between major settlements, you can pick up 2 languages and a tool proficiency from like a more specific list. Village, like 1 language and a couple tool proficiencies. Hermits, they're not going to pick up any extra languages. They're in the middle of nowhere. but they'll pick up a lot of extra, tools and all that's. It's very fluid, do what you like. This is all just like sometimes specifics catch people's interests more than just like an open-ended concept. But you throw that in, throw a name on it. I did a few this morning. I have not had a chance to put it together for a map or a plot really, but one of them was I rolled a 4, so I got a crossroad, and I named it Hilltop. So there's a top of a hill somewhere that's like a crossroad. There's probably like an inn and a small settlement, but it's mostly a crossroads kind of place. I get Alnoria for a like metropolis for one character, and you go out there.
So it's interesting, and I like the idea of having like their languages and skills tied to
Mm-hmm.
this almost instead of doing it from their background. Because what you
Yeah.
have here kind of makes sense as to Metropolis or some of the more like trade oriented places. You're going to have more
Mm-hmm.
languages and maybe a little bit more access to skills. But then as you go down, you got less languages, but then more proficiencies because you need to know those things to survive as a hermit,
Mm-hmm.
for example.
Yeah. If you most people don't need to know how to weave baskets, but if that's how you catch crawdads and that's how you get like 20% of your diet, you're gonna need to know how to weave those baskets. And I can't emphasize enough that I am just some guy. You want to throw in your own options and particulars on this, please have at it. Just a tool that I've found very, very helpful in reducing the amount of prep time I have to do. But that gets everybody thinking about, okay, what's my hometown area? What are some particular skills I picked up because of that area? And it all kind of like, oh, it's like, well, you got glass blowers tool proficiency because you live in a big city. And what's the story behind that? You can build off of it really easily. Similarly, then you get into, at least if you don't click the wrong spot with your mouse, then you've got that origin point, again, just literally on the little map, just like written in there. You can put a little like number on it to show like which of that list it is if you don't have space to write metropolis and then the name of the metropolis or whatever it is. But then you've got your surrounding topography. So mountains, hills, yada yada, all the different kind of land features you could run into. And you're gonna get 4 of them. So the whole idea is I got a list made of you pick a land feature for the area, pick one of 2 skills you've picked up because of that spot. You grew up next to the mountains, you picked up athletics, or you could have picked up this other skill from there too. And then likewise, you have a kind of a third option always available, which is you pick up one of the knowledge skills, the like nature, arcana, history, religion, things you picked up instead of the normal skill for that. So maybe you didn't do a lot of rock climbing in the mountains, but there's a shrine to Thor or Zeus or whatever the I forget the D&D thunder god. There's a shrine to that there, and you kind of picked up some of the religious study or something. So you have religion instead of the normal skill you would expect from that area. And then I've got it all the way down to like you roll a 10, you get the uncommon lands. Like there's straight up like I rolled some options on an example we'll go over here in a minute, but on 2 different things I got uncommon lands, fey lands. So there's a physical land. The Fae are going nuts. There's fairies all over the place, weird trees, and just have it be a literal shadow lands and like literal demonic lands or angelic lands where outsiders are prevalent and like taking over the area. But once you get those 4, and again, you don't have to roll, you can just pick ones that make sense to you. The way it's designed, you would maximize 3 of the same feature, which is more than intentional. I wish I could have a mechanical way to make it less than that, because just to give some variety. Because I've had someone show up and be like, I'm from a pirate ship in the middle of the ocean. And I'm like, that's boring. Give me something to work with here. Can this pirate ship be on an ocean on the 3 sides and on the other side are some hills, like a land base? And they're like, fine, I won't be literally the character from One Piece. And I'm like, okay, cool. But yeah, we could tie all these together in a moment. We'll get to that in a sec. So you got your origin point, you've got the surrounding land features. So you know exactly where your character is from, and then all that's left is their backstory. And let's do that in a somewhat manageable form, which I've called the 4 F's. It's backstory, plot points. It's a friend, a foe, a fear, and a fantasy. Keeping it really straightforward. 4 basic things. So 1 NPC you know of that was a friend of yours, 1 NPC you know of that was like more of a foe, and then some kind of fear and fantasy. Fear and fantasy, pretty open-ended, kind of intentionally. It's hard to like nail down a You get a +1 to woodworker's tools if you're afraid of bees. Like it's hard to figure out exactly how that would translate. And again, some optional like benefits for all the different types. So I've got friend and foe broken down into like there's some kind of equivalent to like a player character class. So they're a warrior, an expert, a mage, an artificer, or a pilgrim, or there's like a citizen, somebody who just has like a job, and then like other, you could come up with some other kind of foe. It could be you could have a dragon that like just doesn't like you and is constantly like dropping copper pieces on you by the handful, which a dragon handful of copper pieces is like 1,000 copper pieces. But it's like you're like, cool, 10 gold, but also I just got like hailed on by metal coins. So like for an example, I have an elf wizard I've named Olathin. Their friend is an expert, a master thief, finds them spell scrolls. And that's all you need. So like very general. There's this little character in the background. You know an expert who steals spell scrolls and then gives them to you because you're a wizard and you're friends. And then their foe is a warrior who is like I put them as like the head of the Adventurers Guild, and they just love to like playfully punch you in the shoulder. But you're a wizard. And so it's really very hostile actually, because their punch is 5 damage and you have 6 hit points. And so when you walk into the Adventurers Guild and you get like punched in the shoulder, hey man, how's it going? And then you're practically on the floor. So then you've got, friend and a foe kind of plot points thing. And then it's time to just kind of bring everything together. So you're going to take all these elements, all the little mini maps, and put them together. You're going to make a little regional map. And, if you can expand on that as the dungeon master and like fill in all the empty spots, or you can kind of just leave them as undiscovered places. And if a character dies or if a new player comes in, you can just show them the map you already have and say, hey, expand on this, like with the same thing. So they'll just be like, oh, there's these mountains in this corner. I'll put mountains on the east of my map and then fill in these other pieces. And there's my little like hometown and how I connect to this larger map. And you can just build on that forever. If you had a really consistent group, like I'm thinking like Critical Role, like if they were doing this kind of thing, Matt Mercer wouldn't have to do any work. It would have just been like tying together all these little mini maps that players kept pulling on every time they started a new campaign. And then similarly, you're going to find connections between the different friends and foes and even the fears and the fantasies of different characters and tie those together for like a starting plot. Now, I have an 8-year-old who was supposed to make these for me so I would have fresh ones to go. She did very much an 8-year-old on summer break thing and forgot and watched cartoons. So I threw a couple together. I used the random roll, like rolling dice thing to make the friends and foes and all the land features and origin points. The only time I re-rolled was when I hit 4 9s, and I was like, what? So I just picked them up and threw them down again. I will just grab my camera and point it down at this piece of paper, and we'll show you what's going on. We're going high tech over here. Now, when I don't do this with physical paper, I do it with Microsoft Paint. So if you're thinking you don't have the skills, trust me, neither do I. So these are the mini maps that with like little character things on the back there. And so we just sort of look for commonalities. Now, when I was rolling, where'd we get it? So the weirdest ones are usually the ones I'll try to tie together first. Like here, I've got 2 different characters that had Fey lands as key features. I like this version so that it kind of opens like a little pamphlet. And then I can do this where I can just literally put the 2 Fey lands pieces together. And now I've got this part of the map. I've got this person's where they actually got Shadowlands as one of theirs. And they got ocean, forest, plains. And I see actually I've got forest up here. So I can tie into that forest with this one.
That is handy that they just pop open.
Yeah.
Just slot
That
them
was
together.
a happy accident. And then I've got this one got double riverlands and has snowlands, but if I try to put snowlands in here, the hills become mountains kind of thing. And I guess you could do like a big snowlands thing. That could be neat. But I could also, there's riverlands over here, and so I can just tie into that. And kind of there you go. So like right there, again, with not a ton of like time investment, I've got a basic map going for for a campaign, and I can literally just take the whole thing and just like turn it to be literally like north, west and east, and then the south. And now I can just get a scrap piece of paper and just draw all this out. And I've got my campaign map complete with like named cities that I've gotten from the players. And then we're like ready to go. Obviously, I'm a little awkward here with my desk space. Otherwise, I could just literally sketch it out here. But you kind of get the idea. So yeah, so we have a campaign map. We could just take a picture. I use Incarnate just personally once I get it all kind of sketched out, and then draw it out and send it over to players. And then you can just take the whole thing and flip it over into the plot points, and we can try to find a through line on that in order to make our actual campaign. So I have a Warforged fighter. Their friend is a citizen, a traveling tinkerer who activated them. Their foe's an artificer who like quote unquote helped restore them, but actually like stole some of their key parts. They're afraid of death because they actually remember being deactivated, and like the whole time is like 1,000-year blank. They don't want to go back to that. And then their fantasy is about completion, just retrieving all of their parts and like restoring themselves. We have an elf wizard. We kind of went over that one already with a master thief friend who steals spell scrolls for them, and a warrior who kind of harasses them. They're a soft boy. They like pain, and they want to become a master mage. We've got a dragonborn bard who's got a mage friend and a thief foe who like always beats them on schemes. Afraid of being poor, so they're always scheming for coin, and their fantasies for wealth. And finally, they have a fairy rogue. Their friend's a citizen, like a baker that keeps them going with like day-old donuts and whatnot. Their foe's also a citizen, like city guard. It's always like catching her in her like rogue schemes. And then there's a fear of high society and a fantasy of like leadership. And then it kind of similarly to, I'm going to try to find the through lines here. There were multiple experts. So I kind of like the idea of the foe of the bard and the friend of the elf wizard are like, they're both thieves. So they're both like on a scheme. We could have I'd like to rope in another foe in there. So like the artificer could also be in on this like heist that they're going to be in on. And then the city guard of the foe, the fairy rogue, could have like extorted that information of this like heist that's happening, but they didn't know that like one of the other characters' friend was kind of roped into it already. So the fairy kind of clued in the city guard to break up this heist situation. And then the foes and friend of the other characters are also involved in that heist. So now it's sort of a race to catch up with this heist in order to either get the friend out of it or thwart the guard so the heist gets pulled off, or do the heist themselves. But you have like a starting plot that involves everybody's backstory and every piece of that. So I think that would work out just fine. And you kind of just pitch that to your players of like, hey, what do you guys think about this? There's sort of a heist happening, so it's sort of a heist game to start with, but also like an anti-heist game. So like a heist with a twist kind of thing, where they're just trying to catch up to where they're at. And then you can get back to your map and see like, okay, well, maybe the heist is up in this mega city that would be the elf wizard's backstory. There's a heist happening in that mega city, but we're down in this other metropolis, and could be the fastest way to get there is like through the Feylands, and that's your only chance of like heading them off because the Feylands matched up there. So if you're in Fenrir, you have to get through the Feylands in order to get to where this city has this heist happening. But then so you have all right, we're starting here, and we can either go long way, around the Feylands or through the Feylands, and the players get to kind of choose what kind of adventure they're going to have before getting to their end goal, and then, trying to thwart that. And then you kind of then you've got like, you're like 5-6 sessions in at that point, by the time you're trying to thwart this heist. And by then you've got a pretty good backup of input from players and stuff to get your whole campaign going.
So I have a couple questions. When you're planning, when you put this all together, you let the players do kind of set where the map pieces go, correct? Like you let them kind
Oh,
of
100%. Yeah, I
mash the
mean,
map together?
you have input because like what there's like if they want a campaign where there's multiple like Phalands going on in multiple pockets, then that's fine. But yeah, you're just sort of there facilitating because the game master is a player also, and so what's fun to them, is a factor. But it is a mutual consent kind of situation where everybody needs to agree, like, yeah, this is kind of what makes sense to put together is like these two Phalanx bits. But if we wanted instead to just put together the forest pieces, and then we want to get this, we want to work these. Actually, I can't even see another way for this to work out, but it's sort of like a puzzle piece kind of situation. Technically, somebody could just be way over there, and there's something, something else like maybe these Phalanx are next to the Shadowlands, and that's how they tie together. But yeah, you just kind of find where things naturally fit, and if there are multiple ways for it to come together, it's whatever seems the most fun or makes the most sense to the group to then be the starting point, and then have things go from there.
And then I assume you do this all during like a session zero.
Right.
Are you kicking this off? Like how you pitching the kind of plot idea and then taking that back and then doing some more prep and then actually running a session one, or are you doing some play immediately after this?
Not enough background that I can usually start immediately with, like, we get the map going and we get the basic premise going, and then I like to start with like a festival. And so there's like, bob for apples, and approving of like archery skills, and fight a monster or something that kind of throws the characters together right away. And like oh, we were all coming to the city because we've all heard about this plot thing that we just agreed on. So I can usually start right away, but that's purely a multi-decade background and running games kind of scenario. I don't expect everybody to be able to do that, but it would be in your session zero after you get past your like vibe check and your, basic safety tools kind of things. And like if there's like themes that one person really wants to play with and somebody else is like, I've been traumatized by that before, I don't want to. And then you're like, oh well, this group's not going to work out. Then you don't usually move on to the map making and everything. You're kind of like, oh well, okay, that's not going to work. You can tell I've recruited from Reddit too many times.
This process, you've done it a couple of times at least. How do you
Mm-hmm.
find that newer players take to this process?
I have found new players love it. I think players who've been playing a long time like it because it's one of those. It's that meme of like, my first character is a human fighter, my 20th character is a toaster that has been blessed by an angel. The So just kind of changing up how it all comes together is great for like old time players. But I found I play mostly with like first time or newer players. It's just kind of I'm like, I will DM for a new group anytime. I love bringing new people into the hobby, and I've had like I was playing for I think like the second time with my wife's cousin, and they were saying like they'd only played in like one campaign, and they were like, after doing this, they were like, I think I can DM now, and I'm like, yes, you can. Here, please go. I'll walk you through anything. And it just takes so much of the weight of having to like come out of a whole world out of nothing out of the back of your brain while like juggling school and work and kids and other hobbies. And people are like, man, I'd really like to get into it, but I don't have 20 hours a week to like throw into a thing. And I'm like, you don't need it, you don't have to. I prep for like 20 minutes a week just to get like what that session's about, get the encounter kind of set up and like treasure schedule, and then we just run off of what they already built with me in session zero. And so, yeah, I found new players absolutely love it. They have a great expectation of the thing they came up with about their character is in the world, it's in the map, it's in the plot, it's right there. There's no like waiting on it. I was actually watching Dimension 20's Dungeons and Drag Queens, and there Brendan Lee Mulligan was mentioning how little preparation he had to do plot wise because it was just their backstories. He just took all their backstories, and that was the plot. So yeah, same thing here. You're just building the plot out of their backstories, which is probably something we should be doing in most of our games, just for buy-in. I can't do modules. My brain can't absorb the material. It doesn't matter if it's a 2-page summary. I just can't. If I wasn't involved in the creation in some manner, I'm just sitting there, just like, and then Strahd's at the castle, right? No, he's in the, he's messing with the barmaid, and I'm like flipping through trying to figure out what's going on, and I can't do it. This though, this is like, I printed out 2 pages, and I'm ready to go with 4 players, and if I was like hanging on to their character sheets, this could literally just like paperclip to it and just be a thing that's like right there. So yeah, I'm enjoying this a lot. All my new players have enjoyed it a lot. Other players who have a couple decades in the hobby have also really enjoyed it. The only thing that's really hard is recruiting people because you don't have a campaign pitch.
It's
You have
happening on the spot, yeah.
Right. Yeah, I got somebody's like, "Oh yeah, what are the details of the world?" And I'm like, "Don't have any. I don't know what the landscape is. I don't know what the plot's going to be. I'm not going to know that till the players tell me, and then that is what it is." But you could tell in like, 20 minutes. This all of the drawing and writing in this took me maybe half an hour, and I did 4 of them by myself. So if you're thinking somebody who's never done it before, this is maybe 10 minutes of your player's time to like be like, all right, home city, I like forests and I like rivers and I like an ocean and then like a mountain. That's all it takes. You don't have to be able to draw. Like, I don't know if you can tell, but my artistic ability is minimal. It's stick figures.
Good enough.
It's good enough. That's all you need. You can go on Incarnate or any of the other like map making things to like, build something pretty off of that, and then you're all set.
So I had remember we talked about this a little bit on the first episode that you were on, and from memory, I tried to kind of put together something similar for a home game that I'm trying to schedule. That's the killer point there.
Yeah, so good for home games. The printout thing.
Yeah,
and you can just like hand it to them. Yeah, nothing but glowing recommendations for that end of things.
So the one thing that I think I ran into is, and I hadn't seen your like friend foe piece of it. So what my plan was to have them each come up with a threat, that's something that's threatening the realm, so like a plague or a lich or an army or something, and I wasn't doing it quite like you did, where you have the center town and then you've got the 4 kind of surrounding pieces. It was just you made like a tile for your hometown, and then you kind of put the borders on the side, and you would puzzle piece them together as well. And I really confused them as to, they're like, but what are we doing? And we don't know what we want to like what kind of things we can have for threats and stuff. So maybe toning it back down to just like friend foe would maybe make a little bit more sense for them.
Yeah. That and the map making too, I've found that when I was like, hey, surrounding land features, they go. And I'm like, hey, here's a list of 10 land features. It's like, they're like, oh, cool. And they just like, they just get to start right away. So yeah, I'm always surprised by how much a list of specifics can like get things going. And then you'll have somebody be like, instead of a desert, could there be like a dead god baby? And I'm like, sure, man. Why not? How big are they? Are we talking like in Guardians of the Galaxy, like the skull? And I was like,
oh yeah,
100%. Yes, there is. It's right there. Do you want Arcana or do you want a free cantrip? Because that was just cool. So yeah, big on that. And yeah, I found when there's confusion, a specific list like solves it. Helps right there. A lot, and then they can just, because if they can't think anything, they just look at it and go, oh, mountain, sure, and then go from there.
I'm gonna have to download your sheets and print those out and try that, because that might work a little bit better. Hopefully, it will be less confusing than what I was trying to do. So
yeah, and it is up on TTRPG. There's like a recommend. I did the whole like it's free, but like there's a recommended donation if people want. If in the abstract, or not in the abstract, in the reality of my life, like if 10,000 people all gave me $1, that would like change my life, kind of thing. So like I fix toilets and reset people's breakers for a living. So I'm not an heiress or anything. So if people feel like toss me a few bucks, I'm like, yeah, super sweet, thanks guys.
I was curious. I have not gone through the process of publishing anything on DriveThruRPG. How is that process of getting a digital?
Minor learning curve, and then as soon as you know where the link is, it's pretty normal. There's like an application process or something. It was a while ago I got approved on it, And I have a copyright that I got on my first thing I put up there, but now I just, on something I'm not going to actually require a payment on, I just threw it up there. It's like, yeah, you like upload it, and then a few days later, it has some sort of review process on their back end. But a few days later, they email you a link, and then it's there. And then you can oddly, because I've updated it like 5 times in the last like 3 days, you don't have to wait a 3-day thing every time you update. Like, oh wait, there should be numbers on these lines and stuff like that. Like, and like I added the final page on the handout to be more, the little like sort of pamphlet style. I thought was really neat when I was like trying to put it together. And it works fine with the front and back also if you want to use one less sheet of paper. But I prefer both. So I think that's kind of the way to go, personally.
And out of curiosity, what software did you use to put together your video?
For the art, I used Microsoft Paint, a very fancy program, and then Google Documents. So it is baseline. I don't, I'm not a video editor or a graphic designer or anything. I just purely, the biggest revelation I had ever was I was making the mini maps, and I realized that instead of I was trying desperately in Microsoft Paint to get the angled lines even, so that north, south, east, and west were lined up. And then I realized I could just like tilt it, and so I just like made them vertical and horizontal, and that changed my life. Where I was just like, it was a problem I was struggling with for like several days, and then realized like, oh wait, north can just be in this corner instead of up. So yeah, that was a big quality of life thing that came up, and I felt pretty good about.
Well, is there anything else that you would like to mention about your collaborative campaign creator?
Let me know how it goes. I've got 4 or 5, completed campaigns that I've done this in, where I fully have like, I didn't want to like, put anybody on the spot for my like gaming servers or like post their links or anything. So, but I have fully like, I do this digitally. Usually I send them the blanks, they send me back, where they drew in, mountains and rivers and whatever. And then I, with Microsoft Paint sometimes, or just on paper, then I sketch out and like put it together and like pitch that back to the group, like, hey, does this work? And then go from there. So yeah, you guys can do that. Check it out. I've got, what am I on the socials? We map TTRPG on Threads, and I have not posted yet, but I'm trying desperately to move away from Twitter because it's gotten bad. I'm trying to leave. Nobody's giving me a Blue Sky invite, so I'm gonna I'll be over on Threads here momentarily. But yeah, if people want to reach out, and even so far as like they want somebody to walk their group through it, like if we can schedule something, I'm happy to like pop in and be like, work with a group and be like, hey, what do you got? All right, let's try to put it together. And then they have their campaign, and they can go off to the races from there.
Cool. Sounds good. Well, thank you, Jeff, for coming on and sharing everything that you've been working on. This is awesome.
Yeah, for sure. And that we map TTRPG currently in my free time, if it exists ever, working on class features and things. I'll be happy to get that off the ground. There's already like a non-combat version, but it's meant to be like a D&D alternative, so I got to figure out how sword swinging works. Yeah, otherwise, what are you doing? But yeah, nice to talk to you.